Buy on MTG. Construct your deck. Command your board. Conquer the table.
Hello out there in the wide world of web. This is Rob with Buy on MTG. Today we are going to do a deck tech for the Blame game. This is upgraded. It will show an error, and that is only because, where is it? Screaming Nemesis, for some reason in the system, doesn't show as legal yet. But we all know it came out, so we're going to move forward with it. So Blame game upgraded. These are the remove. It's a total of 28 cards that have come out, and these are the 28 adds. So it's a pretty intensive upgrade to it. I'm going to go ahead and reformat so the removes are not shown, and the adds will be integrated into the columns that they belong into. Okay, now looking at it, it should just be Nelly Borca, artifacts, creatures, enchantments, instants, lands, and sorceries. So just a quick rundown. A total of 9 artifacts. If you're going to look through them, you'll notice it's pretty much mana rocks that are applicable. Weirdly enough, even though it's Boros, the no maximum hand size has presented itself as viable on a couple instances. Although the deck out of the pre-con is largely Goad, I've incorporated a huge amount of the stop hitting yourself element to it. So Pariah and Pariah Shield. So Pariah Shield is one of the artifacts that I've added. Mithril Coat, that flash indestructible, and being able to attach it to a legendary at flash speed, making the creature legendary. Nelly tends to get a fair amount of hate because she forces a lot of combat. And the neat thing is the suspect, when you suspect the creature, they're identified and they have a suspect counter is kind of how we keep track of it. But it's not Goad all creatures that are suspected that she's attacking. It's Goad all creatures that are suspected. So as you go a little bit further into the game, you'll have all three of the other players each have one or two suspect creatures. That also because you can suspect a creature that it belongs to a player that you're not attacking directly. So it is a very viable method to deal with the large problematic creatures on the board, and it forces other players to deal with it accordingly. A fun card that was within the pre-con is a Bloodthirsty Blade, so goading other people's creatures, right on theme with it, but it doesn't directly fall within the stop hitting yourself. As far as creatures, Agitator Ant, we all know that's funny. You know, it's goad some stuff. Hey, do you want to make your creatures bigger? Okay, we'll goad them, of course. This is one of the adds. Between this and Slicer, the hired muscle, I found being able to give somebody else a creature and forcing them to attack one another with it is pretty viable, especially with the whole pseudo chaos but stop hitting yourself and Goad theme to it. It definitely adds a huge time reducer to the overall clock of the game. I will say Anya Merciless Angel, not super on theme. If I were to do a larger upgrade, she would certainly get cut. Boros Reckoner, of course, you are well aware on a stop hitting yourself, any damage redirection. And that's why Screaming Nemesis made the cut as soon as it was spoiled. I printed a proxy version of it. Fortunately, when I was doing pack breaks for Bob in the Gamers Haven inventory, the very first pack I opened had a Screaming Nemesis. So asked Bob, hey, do you mind setting that aside and writing my name on it? And when I'm allowed to buy it, I'll buy it. Well, pre-release weekend has come and I'm allowed to buy it. So it's in the deck immediately. Brash Taunter, yet another damage redirection system, and ridiculously strong. I think just it being indestructible is crazy. I will say the Mithril Coat being indestructible, even though it doesn't auto attach. I have equipped it on the Boros Reckoner before, and it does what you think it does. Esper Sentinel, not directly on theme, but let's face it, if you want a theme to work, you need as much ramp and you need as much card draw as possible. And it's just a beast of a card. I mean, anything that is not quite, but pretty much an auto include in CEDH levels of a deck. If you have an extra one banging around and you're not, in my personal opinion, running it in every white deck that you have, so you're making some level of decision, this is where my one Esper Sentinel lies amongst all of my decks. Atali is great. I think the new Atali is stronger, but if I were to do a larger upgrade, I would pretty much just swap this Atali for the newer one. But this was in the pre-con, and it serves its purpose. It serves it pretty well. Feather's okay. Similar to Anya, the Merciless Angel, it would get the axe if I was to do a deeper upgrade to this. And who knows, I'm going to continue to play it. I've said it when I did my bag review, like what I carry with me and why, because I'm doing one of each guild. This deck is really good at getting second place because it forces the other three people to kill one another, but I rarely have enough power to close the game out. So who knows? I might go from a 28 card upgrade to a 30 or 31. And if I do, these two angels are gone. And Atali's going to get swapped for the bigger and better Atali. Warmonger, just a great card. I think it's pretty neat because of benefit to my opponents swinging at each other, but they're goaded already. I might as well make it harder for them to deal with one another. Keeper of the Accord, to me, in a white pseudo-casual or even a strong-built pre-CEDH list, is an auto-include. Just the ability to play catch-up. Are you behind on lands? Well, get another land. Are you behind on creatures? We'll make a little critter. Lorna the Third Path, very strong card. It giving the artifact removal or enchantment removal is pretty amazing. Funny enough, I've forced opponents to draw cards on a couple different instances. Primarily, if one player is very far behind, I'll try and feed them to keep them up, because the more creatures they have in play, the more things I have to goad. And a lot of time, if they've drawn a second card, well, that triggers some of these enchantments like Smothering Tithe or Smuggler's Share. So she certainly does work, and triggering Smuggler's Share always makes me smile. Phyrexian Vindicator, the only downside about this thing is that it's a quad white mana cost, but goodness, it does work, and the damage redirection is pretty amazing. Screaming Nemesis, brand new card out of Duskmourn. Although, like I said, I printed it out as soon as it was spoiled, and I've been running it in at least 6 games. I've never had an opportunity to have it in play. It still reads like a really strong card, and I look forward to seeing if it backs it or if it just eats removal instantly, because I know if it was coming, I would probably force it to eat the removal or just eat the 3 damage, because you certainly don't want to block it and trigger its redirection and you can't gain life for the rest of the game, because that's horrible. Selfless Squire has huge, almost like pseudo fog, entering the battlefield, preventing all damage that would be dealt to you this turn. Whenever damage is prevented this way, you put that many counters on Selfless Squire. I have had Selfless Squire save me as a really pseudo Teferi's protection and come in at like a 31-31. Just a beast. It's a really fun card, and when you draw as much heat as forcing everybody to attack one another and they have the opportunity to swing at you, sometimes this card by itself can help you close out a game, because you've had the other 3 people kill one another until there's one player that has a hell of a board state compared to you. They full swing because they're kind of over it, and you Selfless Squire, and then you bring it right back. It's pretty amazing. Slicer, everybody knows it's a great card. It's just funny. Anytime you can throw it in there and just get it running in the mix, it's great. Solemn Simulacrum, really cool card. I mean, it's ramp, it's card draw, it's all what you want, and it being colorless, it can go in the decks that don't have green and make things happen. Leonin Stalker, or Stalking Leonin, is a pretty neat card. It lets you play that goofy, like, did I pick you? I always make it a little bit more of a production than it probably should be when I bring it into play. I'll talk about people's board states. I'll try and make it very apparent who I picked, and I'll always pick somebody else just because I think it's funny. Stuffy Doll. Stuffy Doll, everybody knows it. It goes with Pariah. It goes with Pariah Shield. It pinging itself, but it's still second fiddle to Brash Taunter because Stuffy Doll, you choose the player. Brash Taunter, you just target the opponent. Brash Taunter's just better, in my personal opinion, but Stuffy Doll is still just, it's been there forever. It needs to stay in it. Sun Titan, really, really viable card. It brings back, I've brought back Smuggler's Share with it. I brought back Pariah with it. I brought back Esper Sentinel with it. That being said, I don't feel like I have quite enough targets to make Sun Titan as viable as it should be. So that being said, if I were to do a larger cut, this would be the fourth card that I would cut out of this. And really, I feel that although I do get a fair amount of card draw within this deck, I would try and incorporate more card draw if possible. Vengeful Ancestor, it's just another Goad card. It's okay. I don't feel like it's super great, but it does the Goad thing, and it does punish the player for having cards better than me. Windborn Muse, it's from the pre-con. It's not on theme. It would be a card that I cut if I did a deeper upgrade. Moving to enchantments, a lot of them are either Goad or theme specific or attempt to ramp or card draw me. So this is just another Goad. Martial Impetus is Goad. Pariah on theme, similar to the Pariah Shield to stop hitting yourself. Redemption Art is pretty funny. You tend to throw it on other people's creatures, but I would be lying if I said I haven't stuck it on something of mine before just for the indestructible, because sometimes you need to do the thing. Seal of Cleansing, nice little spot removal. Enchantment and Artifact Hate, I feel like by and large, people don't run enough Enchantment Hate specifically. So I was super happy that this was already included in the pre-con. Shiny Impetus, just a great card. Goad 'em. And the neat thing is, the benefit to me is it gives me a little treasures. It gives me ramp. Smothering Tithe is another one that I classify about the same category as Esper Sentinel. Super strong. Should be an auto include. Due to that reason, I don't run it in every one of my white decks. In fact, right now, this is the only white deck that I have it in because it's part of my bag and I consider it a very strong card, so I just don't run it in everything. Smuggler's Share. When this card first came out, I felt like it missed the mark quite a bit. The first half a dozen games that I played it in, it really didn't do what I was expecting it to do. All of that being said, the last 5 or 6 games that I've played it in, it has done work and I've been very happy with it. I know it is, it's got a very high ceiling, but a very, very low floor. Sometimes it just doesn't do anything. So it's hit and miss on your play group. If your play group draws a lot of cards and ramps quite a bit, then it's going to bring it. If your play group plays very fair magic, draw go, then it's not going to do what you think it's going to do. Soul Snare, just a great card. Sacrifice it, exile something attacking me, because it's going to happen. Even though you go to them all, they're still going to come at you. And Soul Snare, funny enough, because you could say, oh, it's an exile thing for 1 mana. It's a Swords to Plowshare. It's a Path to Exile. But really, it does so much more than that, because it's sitting on the board. So it will deflect attacks 2, 3, 4 times sometimes because you're sitting there with it and they're aware that it's there and they don't want to lose their creature just yet. I will say my play group in general is a make them have it, make them do it kind of group. So it doesn't do that in my group, but when I'm out and about and I'm playing with random pickup groups, it tends to keep people out of your yard. Trouble in Pairs, great card. Controversial artwork, not going to get into it, but overall, very powerful card. 4 mana's pretty steep for what it does, but it's good, and I feel like it's worth keeping in there. Apparently, the general consensus is it's a good card. That's why it's $34.11. Ridiculous. Either way, Vow of Duty, not a goad, but in many instances, it's better than a goad because it keeps them out of your yard, even if it's still 1v1. It's a nice effect to just slow something down, keep the creature away from me, and if you are still attacking other people, then great. Because sometimes you vow of duty the thing, and then you suspect it, and then you still goad it. Vow of Lightning, very similar effect. Gives them first strike, makes them bigger, keeps them out of your yard. Instances, I try to use my instances as answers. I obviously don't have counter spells, but when I look at things that give protection or things that phase my stuff out, it's a counter spell to me. Because if somebody Wrath of God and I can Teferi's Protection in response, or I can Akroma's Will in response, I've essentially countered that ability for me personally. Akroma's Will also is a very strong method to break through a token strategy because you give them protection. It's also a good way to close a game out with that double strike. The Flying and Vigilance, giving nice evasion, but I don't know how many times that Indestructible or the Protection have been the two main things that I want out of this card. Chaos Warp, it's great removal. I think I've only seen in one instance where Chaos Warp and shuffle and reveal the card, and it was what was warped. As a positive aspect, it happened to me, and to watch my friend Jason's face in response to Chaos Warp revealing the card he just warped, it was hilarious. Comeuppance, exceptionally strong card. It goes into the redirection, stop hitting yourself, pretty strong. Deflecting Palm, I don't know how many times I've knocked a player out of the game with Deflecting Palm. They come at you with either one giant creature or one huge spell, and you palm it right back at them. It's hilarious. Deflecting Swat, I think 99% of the time, it's a counter a removal spell that's going at my thing and send it at their thing. But every now and then, you need it in a pinch. It can be a card draw. It's such a great and very versatile and kind of justifies why it's so expensive. Flawless Maneuver, not as many people love it. I think it's great, being that it's another one of the 0 mana, same cycle as Deflecting Swat, but Flawless Maneuver, not nearly as sought after, hence the price difference. But making your creatures indestructible, like I said, I invest a lot of my instance in pseudo counter spells, and really what that means to me is maintaining my board state. Gideon's Sacrifice, choose a creature or planeswalker you control. All damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to that. So this redirection, to throw it at something like Boros Reckoner or Brash Taunter, which throws it right back at somebody else. That card, Gideon's Sacrifice, is so great, and it's 1 mana, and it's really easy to keep a mana up or just a token or a treasure rather. Immortal Obligation, just a great card, bringing stuff back, giving you a little bit of recursion. Very similar to Savine's Reclamation, but the recursion package in this deck is very small because I don't really lean into that. And maybe that's a reason to argue to keep Sun Titan in. You might not have a ton of targets, but you do have targets, and that recursion is nice. And Immortal Obligation is also nice. Path and Swords, I feel the same way about them. Just great cards. Reverberate, copy targeted instant or sorcery. You can choose new targets for the copy. It's essentially like Fork. If you're an old Magic player, Reverberate is cute. I've mainly used it to target if somebody did like a big ramp or a big card draw. That being said, my initial thought of it was I'm going to redirect something back at them, but it's a rarity that I've ever actually used it for it. And although I have added this card, it hasn't really performed to the level that I'm super happy with. So I will say out of all the things that I've added so far, this has been the most lackluster. Swords, great. Take the bait, cast during an opponent's turn and only during combat. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you and planeswalkers you control this turn. Untap those creatures and goad them. There's an additional combat phase after this. Sometimes they keep Nelly Borca down and they're aware I'm attempting to goad them. You tend to draw a lot of heat in this deck, and periodically you'll have one player that's got that big advantage and they swing at you. You take the bait 'em, so that way it prevents everything that you're about to take, which is normally 10, 15 damage. It goads them, the other two people. And I have had it knock a player out before, but it's a lot, and it's very specific when this does work. So I would say out of cards that are in the pre-con that are still in here, this is another one that I'm not a super fan of. T-Protect, it's amazing. Everybody's aware. Everybody knows it. It's the best card ever. It's very strong. It's in the same category as Smothering Tithe and Esper Sentinel. I wouldn't run it in every white deck only because it's super good and it shouldn't be in every white deck unless you're attempting to OP everything. Blasphemous Act, you need a board wipe. How amazing is a board wipe that also can indirectly kill your opponents because you've Blasphemous Act and you have a Reckoner out, you have your Taunter out, you have your Screaming Nemesis out, you have your Stuffy Doll out, and all of that damage gets shot right back at the person. But overall, Blasphemous Act, powerful card. Disrupt Decorum, one of the original Goad cards. I think it's still in here because it was in the pre-con. Does it do the thing? Yes, it does the thing. Is it ever been an amazing card in my gameplay with this deck? No. I feel like it could potentially be another card draw or a ramp to bring me into the already proven and already strong cards that are within the deck. Disrupt Decorum is another one that I would cut. Don't Move is a really neat card. It's from the Jurassic Park series that I completely missed. And I read this card just when I was standing at the Gamers Haven, just BSing with people. And we were just standing there looking at the glass case. Read this thing. Destroy all tapped creatures until your next turn. Whenever a creature becomes tapped, destroy it. Yeah, I goad things. I goad things a lot. People are turning cards sideways. And sometimes they do a huge alpha strike, not on their own volition, but because they have to. And then the board is one player with 20 big creatures and me with like 2 or 3 little creatures. And Don't Move is the answer. Don't Move wipes their entire board. And then I just don't do anything until my next turn. And yeah, it makes it happen. Sometimes they do the alpha strike and then there's another opponent that still has to swing. Well, they still have to do it and they're still going to kill all their creatures. Don't Move is a pretty amazing card. Jessica's Will, just as strong as Teferi's Protection. An amazing card. It's ramp, it's card draw, it's everything you want, all tied up with a nice little bow. It does work. It's totally worth every cent. Mob Verdict is one of the weird ones. Secret Council. Each player secretly votes for another player. Then those votes are revealed. For each vote an opponent received, Mob Verdict deals 2 damage to that player for each creature that player controls. And for each vote you receive, draw a card. So really the way that it works is everybody just kind of assesses. Nobody wants to give you a card. And that's okay, because you at least get 1 card out of it, because you're going to vote for yourself, because you want those cards. Promise of Loyalty is super cute card. Putting vow counters on stuff. It's a nice answer. It's a good board wipe. That being said, it gets around indestructible if somebody's heavily in indestructible decks, because they're sacrifice based. And they can't attack you. So it persists beyond just the Goad. So when you're down to the 1v1, it's still in it to win it. Savine's Reclamation, powerful card. Certainly not on the same caliber as like Jessica's Will and Teferi's Protection. I wouldn't say it's broken to the point where you feel like you're almost cheating running it in every white deck. But it's a very strong card, and I believe it should be in pretty much every white deck. Most. Last card we're looking at is Vandal Blast. Vandal Blast is just a good answer for artifacts, and overloading it is great because sometimes people have a ton of treasures. Sometimes you're playing against an artifact deck. Sometimes it just knocks down 1 or 2 mana rocks per person, and that's enough. Really, if you slow each opponent down by 1 to 2 mana, so you're taking the entirety of the table down by 5 mana, well, it was worth the 5 mana you spent. Looking down at stats specifically, we'll see we're a little bit white heavy. Right now, the mana base is only slightly white heavy, but that's okay because there's a lot of dual lands. And I did skip the lands in their entirety. I stuck in the couple fetches. I stuck in the couple duels. I stuck in spectator seating, just stuff to try and smooth out the mana base. It does have access tunnel, and that's to make Nelly be able to swing freely. Although you can usually, she's got a pretty big butt on her. You can normally get through. I'm assuming that's a female. I don't know. They have a pretty big butt on them, and they can normally get through pretty easy between that and Rogue's Passage. But really, I hate having to use Rogue's Passage because that's essentially a 5 mana dump to get the creature across, where Access Tunnel is only a 4 mana dump. But it was in the precon, so whatever. Needle Spires just came in the precon. It's an okay card. I'm not married to it, but I didn't want to do a full mana or land-based swap to optimize it. And you will notice none of my decks do I run OG duels, and I don't feel like that card is available to most people, so I don't run super expensive cards. Similar to running off-color fetches, I feel like they're a flavor fail. Moving back down to cost, we're going to look at curve. You'll notice there's nothing on the high end of the curve, even though we know Blasphemous Act is in there. But by and large, you're not casting Blasphemous Act unless the board's starting to get out of control. And out of control normally involves at least 5, 6, 7 other creatures. So Blasphemous Act, I traditionally will mark at 2, no more than 2, because I'm not casting it if there's only 1 or 2 creatures. So curve-wise, peaking out at 3, it's a pretty nice, balanced, smooth curve. And we know most of 2 are mana rocks to get us to the 4. To get us to 3, to get us to 4, and having a commander at 4, the biggest thing that you want is a rock at 2, so that way your commander's out on 3. Looking more at categories, let me change from categories to type. So artifacts, 13% or 13 of them creatures. It's just a reasonable breakdown. It's not a crazy, crazy breakdown, and similar with white and red spells accordingly. Overall, I will say this deck as a whole is a ton of fun to play. It's very interactive. It forces people to stop and think, because a lot of people want to moonwalk past the combat phase, and this one says no. Let's all do some math. Let's get in there. Let's do some combat phase, and it's the first Boros list that I've ever put together and enjoyed. I don't know the exact amount. I guess I could switch it over to categories and look real quick. Yeah, I've put in almost $300 into this on top of what the pre-con costs. So I'm looking at 351. Salt score, I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm more salty than average. But either way, it's a blast to play. If you've never played a Goad or Stop Hitting Yourself, I would say this template is a very fun and strong way to start. If you want to cut down that cost pretty quickly, it'd be relatively easy by getting rid of things like T-Protect, by cutting things like Smothering Tithe. You could cut down the cost really quick. Oh, that's cheaper than I thought. So what am I looking at? Esper Sentinel, Smothering Tithe, Teferi's Protection, and Jeska's Will brings the price down quite a bit. And then if you need to cut it even lower, cut your Arid Mesa and cut your Sacred Foundry, and you've probably brought it down to a $100 deck. Either way, I am going to incorporate this neat little thing that I found. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but under Share, under Architect, there is a Generate a Poem. So I'm going to include a little poem at the end of this deck tech that Architect made for me, and I thought it was pretty cool. So I figured, I don't know, you might like it too. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech. I'm Rob. This has been Bion MTG. Good luck and have fun.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment down below.